Right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Salvador Rocha. I am an enrollment manager here at Azusa Pacific University. And I'm also a representative for the Upper Division BSN transfer program. It's actually a combination of both the BSN transfer and the LVN to BSN program. They are virtually the exact same thing as when it comes to prerequisites and application items. So I'm going to hand it off to Kelsey. She's my colleague here, and she will begin the presentation for us. But thank you again for coming and welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. We're really excited to be presenting today and be able to talk with you about this program. My name is Kelsey Spolstra. I'm also a senior admissions representative with our graduate and professional admissions department. So I also work with students applying to this program. So we are excited to be talking with you and are excited to answer questions you might have. So an agenda, what we're going to be going over today is a little bit about APU, who we are, what we stand for. We'll go over the program details, what the program entails, some more specifics on that as far as prerequisite classes and the time-intensive program that it is. We'll talk about the admissions requirements. We'll talk about tuition and financial aid, and then we'll also be able to answer any questions that you might have as well. We'll get to as many questions as we can, but please feel free to submit questions as we go through the presentation, but also know that we're going to be going over a lot of information today, so maybe some of your questions will be answered throughout the presentation. So we'll start with just an introduction on who APU is and what we stand for. So a little bit about us. We have about 8,000 students enrolled at Azusa Pacific University. We are, that includes our traditional undergraduate students, our professional undergraduate students, and our graduate students. And that includes both on-campus and regional campuses and online programs. We have a 12-to-1 student to professor ratio. So that means for every 12 students, we have one faculty member. And we were founded in the year of 1899. So this upcoming year, we're going to be celebrating our 125th year as an institution. We're really excited to be hitting that milestone and reflecting on the history that we've had as well. We have 4 cornerstones that we build that the school is built on. Those cornerstones are Christ Scholarship, Community, and Service. We are a Christian university, so that is the core of who we are. However, students are not required to be Christians to attend the school. There is no faith statement required for students to sign in order to attend the school, but it's important to know that that is an important aspect of the school, and we are a God-first institution. That's our motto. All staff and faculty are Christians, and they will be teaching from that point of view, and there will be a faith-integrated component in each class. We also want students to be involved in the community, and that's a part of that is being in a cohort. So this program in particular has an important community aspect because students will be taking the same classes with the same students all throughout the program. So they'll get to know students really well. Scholarship is the academic side of our institution. So of course, students come to APU to get a degree and to be prepared for their career. So we have regional accreditation. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, but obviously our academics are a priority of our institution. And then service, this is an important aspect, especially for this program, being in the helping professions. We want to prepare students for what that's going to look like. And we've had really positive feedback from our students who have said that they don't only feel prepared to be a nurse in the clinical sense and the academic sense, but also in the service sense that they're growing in their bedside manner and how to have hard conversations and good conversations with families and patients that they may be working with. So a little bit about the program details and the admissions requirements for the programs. Why APU? So we know there's a lot of nursing schools out there. So what is distinct about APU? Graduates are eligible for the California Registered Nurse License and the Public Health Nursing Certificate. So once students graduate with a BSN from our program, they will be eligible to take the NCLEX exam, which awards a student the RN license, and students will also be eligible for the Public Health Nursing Certificate. Our nursing programs are consistently ranked very well nationwide. We're currently ranked number 5 by College Factual and number 20 by Niche. In addition, we are one of 7 schools in California named a nursing college of distinction for the 2020-2021 year. And our alumni, so the students who have gone through this program, rank APU among the top 25 universities nationwide. A brief program overview. So this program has a minimum requirement of 48 transferable units, and that does need to include the specific prerequisite units that are required for this program. All of those classes need to be completed prior to the deadline in order to be considered for the upcoming semester. So that's something that's really important to keep in mind. And the School of Nursing does have some pretty specific prerequisite classes that are required for this program, and they all need to be completed prior to the deadline. This program is 6 semesters, so it's 2 years, 24 months. There is a fall and spring semesters. Those are each 16 weeks, and there's also summer terms, which are 12 weeks long. This program is offered in 3 locations: in Monrovia, in the Inland Empire, more specifically San Bernardino, in the High Desert, more specifically Victorville. And we are regionally and WASC accredited. So we're accredited by the Commission of Collegiate Nursing Education, the CCNE, and WASC. Clinical hours are required for students that are going through this program, and clinical hours and clinical placements will be given to students, will be assigned to students, and they will be assigned based off of the location where students are taking classes. So if students are taking classes in the Monrovia location, the clinical hours will be in that general area, along with San Bernardino and in Victorville. Depending on where you're taking classes, that's where students will be placed for clinical hours. The settings of where those clinicals are and like what that schedule will look like will vary based off of the semester. So this program is pretty time intensive. So it does require a pretty flexible schedule. Classes could be anywhere between 2 to 4 days per week, and clinical hours could be 1 to 2 days per week. So that's just something to keep in mind when considering applying for this program, of what that schedule will look like, to maintain a flexible schedule. So this is an overview of the prerequisite courses. I'll start out by saying that if you have specific questions on prerequisite classes, we'd be more than happy to help out with that, but we won't be able to help out with those questions tonight on this webinar. I would encourage you to start an application, and you can upload a copy of your unofficial transcripts, and we can do an evaluation of those classes to determine exactly what prerequisite classes you've completed and what is still required as well. But the prerequisite courses, as a general overview, the general education prerequisites are the writing, literature, fine arts, and history. Those four classes specifically can be waived with a full CSU GE certificate, an IGETC certificate, or a bachelor's degree. So if you've fulfilled one of those certificates or a bachelor's degree, those 4 specific classes may be waived. As far as the nursing prerequisites, the classes that are required are public speaking, psychology, intro to psychology, general microbiology, anatomy, physiology, and organic and biochemistry. Each of those classes does require the lab component as well, and then human growth and development. Something to note is that there's no expiration date for these prerequisite courses. So if you're worried that you took those classes many years ago, as long as the specific curriculum meets the curriculum requirements that the School of Nursing has, that class may still be transferable. So that's just something to keep in mind. Again, we'd be happy to do a closer evaluation of what classes you've completed, but after you complete the application and upload your transcripts. Other courses that may be required are the math prerequisite and for the statistics class. Statistics is not required to be completed prior to the deadline, but it would need to be completed by the end of the 2nd semester of the program for students who are admitted. And typically a math class is required as a prerequisite for the statistics class. So if students haven't taken either one of those courses, there is a math placement exam that students could take if they're admitted into the program, and then they could take the statistics class within the program. And then there are also biblical studies courses that are required, and the number of how many courses are required for each student will be determined by how many transfer credits the student has completed.
All right. So what are the application requirements? There is a $45 application fee. Official transcripts showing the completion of all prerequisites. As Kelsey mentioned, all prerequisites do need to be completed before the deadline you're aiming to meet. For those students that are applying for the LVN to BSN program, you will need proof of licensure, which you can probably just get a screenshot of through the DCA website if you're licensed here in California. As far as your nursing statement, it is a 1-page maximum. So I do recommend, if you have a lot to talk about or write about, go ahead and use single space typing to make efficient use of that single page. So the main prompt question is, what are your professional goals? So this statement will serve as a personal statement. So share a little bit about yourself, why you're interested in APU's nursing program, why you're passionate about nursing. And then while you're still answering that question as to what are your professional goals as a nurse. And then it's also going to serve as a writing sample. So just make sure you spend a little bit, a little bit of time on that statement because it is a writing sample. They want to make sure that everything's grammatically correct and easy to read. So when it comes to recommendations, all you really need to do is provide 2 references. So first and last name and an email address of those individuals, preferably individuals that are familiar with both either your professional abilities or your academic abilities. So acceptable references will be, a current or previous supervisor, a manager, or a professor. You don't want to select individuals that are relatives or your friends. But basically what will happen is that once you include those references on your application, an email from our admissions office will automatically be sent to them and they'll be able to fill out that form electronically. As far as a resume goes, just anything that's professional. So you'll want to highlight your work experience, your volunteer experience, and any other certifications or skills that you may have. You'll go ahead and highlight that there. Examples for additional skills could be, software skills, language skills, maybe you're CPR certified, things like that. And then, of course, you need the bare minimum of 48 transferable units. Of those 48 units would be those prerequisites that we just went over in the last couple slides. You'll see that the GPA requirements are 3.0 cumulative and 2.7 science GPA. Cumulative will include all college level coursework. So remedial coursework like reading before you get into a writing course or intermediate algebra, those are remedial courses, though those will not count towards cumulative, but anything that's level 100 and above. And then when it comes to science GPA, the averages of that would consist of the averages for human anatomy, physiology, microbiology, and organic and biochemistry. And again, the prerequisites do need to be completed before the deadline you're aiming to meet. All right, so speaking of deadlines, we have 3 deadlines every school year. We have one coming up in a couple weeks on October 1st, and that is for our spring term, which actually starts in January, usually the second week of January. The following deadline, if you're still working on prerequisites this fall, would be February 1st for the summer term that starts in May. And then our other deadline would be June 1st, if you're taking classes even in the spring, for the fall term that starts usually at the end of August. If you do meet one of those deadlines and you are able to submit your application, those decisions are made about 8 to 10 weeks after the deadline. So the School of Nursing does give all candidates the opportunity to meet that deadline. So they'll begin reviewing those after that deadline, like I mentioned. And then as far as the number of admitted students across the 3 campuses that we just mentioned, 20 students will be selected for the Monrovia regional site, 20 students here in San Bernardino, that's where I'm located, and then there's 30 students at the High Desert campus, and that's 3 times a year. So in total for a term would be about 70 students, and it'd be a combination of both LVN and BSN students and upper division nursing transfer students. All right, so how can we verify your prerequisite courses? I'm sure you guys all have questions about whether your units so far are transferable. The first thing is just to visit our transfer guideline website. We have prepared several guidelines for multiple schools, community colleges, 4-year universities in Southern California, and some of them are outside of California. So that'd be the first thing to do. So those prerequisites show the equivalent courses that are offered at a specific community college, for example, that will satisfy that subject that you're aiming to meet. And then I think later on, we'll be able to provide you with a QR code with that guideline website. The other option is just to start an application and upload your unofficial transcripts. That's one way we can evaluate your coursework. So you just start the app. In the enrollment history, I believe it's college history information, you'll be able to type in the name of the school you've attended, and you'll be able to upload your unofficial transcripts on the application itself. The average time is about 5 to 7 business days for the evaluation to be completed by our registrar's office. And then that will actually be, it'll be a checklist of the prerequisites. So the evaluation will list the schools you've attended, the total number of transferable units, and the checklist of the prerequisites. So if you're still missing prerequisites, for example, maybe there's too many for now to meet this upcoming deadline, you can either defer or you can even withdraw your application while you're still completing those prereqs. So long as you have that evaluation, that will be a good roadmap from here on out to determine, what's left for you to be an eligible candidate or applicant for this program. And you'll notice there, even if you've started an application and then you decided to withdraw because you're still working on prerequisites, it will not negatively affect your chances of being admitted into the program. So here is an example of a transfer guideline. If you have your phone out, you can go ahead and scan that QR code. It should send you to our transfer guideline website, and you'll notice a list of schools in alphabetical order. And once you click on it, a PDF similar to this will pop up. And as you'll notice, you'll see the subject that you're aiming to, the subjects that are the prerequisites on the left-hand side. And at this particular college, Citrus College, you'll notice all the options that are available to you to satisfy that one prerequisite. So you'll notice here, you just have to choose one course to satisfy either writing, public speaking, history, literature, fine arts, and so on and so forth. And here, under that second option of evaluating your coursework, once you start that app and upload those transcripts, is an example of an actual evaluation. So this is a sample, but hopefully we have all of these checked off. You'll notice towards the bottom, though, that we have intermediate algebra and statistics listed on there because a lot of students have questions as to, have I met the math requirement? I know Kelsey earlier mentioned that it is not a prerequisite for the program. In fact, you can get admitted to the program without completing either of these math courses. And the highest math course would be statistics. But because we have so many questions, and if a student has completed it, we'll make sure to note it down on the evaluation for you so you don't have to worry about taking any additional courses if you don't have to. But here's an example, and you'll notice the number of, right here, schools attended. That's where we'll list those there, the total number of transferable units right there, and then the list of prereqs. So going into our student financial services, first thing is cost of tuition. This is on average a 72 unit program if you're coming in with at least 48 units, the bare minimum. If you completed statistics, for example, that would actually be 3 less units that you would have to take here at APU. But this is how we calculate the base cost of tuition for the average 72 units it'll take you to complete this nursing program. So $825 multiplied by 72 will give you the $59,400 of the tuition. And this is just based off the current pricing. This is subject to change. And they review this, I think, on an annual basis to see if they need to increase or decrease the cost per unit. But speaking of that, as far as financial aid goes, we function just like every other major university. So first thing you would want to do is, if you were admitted to the program, is submit your FAFSA application. And at that point, we would determine your eligibility when it comes to grants and loans. But these are the several different ways that we can fund your education. So any scholarships or grants could be applied towards your tuition bill. As far as loans, you would get to decide what you would like to put towards tuition. And then, any of those students that are military affiliated and would like to use their education benefits, we have an entire office dedicated to it. So you can use your VA benefits there as well. And then company reimbursement. So some of you that are attending today may have education benefits through your employer. That's definitely a good option. And our financial aid office and our registrar's office would be happy to work with you to make sure that those funds would be covered by your employer. So it might mean, we need to provide you with a receipt or proof of enrollment. We'd be happy to work with you and your employer to make sure that happens. Going back to financial aid, if you scan that QR code and the FAFSA application should pop up, or you can just type in fasfa.ed.gov. And if you have completed a FAFSA application by the time you apply for the nursing program, all you would have to do is add APU school code on there and resubmit the application. Or if it's your first time, you go ahead and include APU school code, and then you'll go ahead and submit it. You should receive a confirmation email once you submit the FAFSA application. But that would be the first step when it comes to eligibility, or seeing what you may be eligible for when it comes to grants and loans. But it is not a requirement at this point, if you're still in the application phase, to submit the FAFSA application. You can submit the FAFSA application once you've learned you've been admitted to the nursing program. And just the contact information for our Student Financial Services Department. They're a pretty busy office. I'm sure they would probably, be able to answer some questions, some general questions for you. But again, this could come at a later time once you've learned you've been admitted to the nursing program. All right. So we will be going into a Q&A for frequently asked questions as well. But you'll notice this is our admissions email address. If you start an application, just know that you will be assigned an admissions representative. Kelsey and I are on a much bigger team. So no matter what, if you inquire or apply, you will always have the opportunity to speak with one of us, and we'd be happy to answer your questions. And I will go into the first FAQ, which is, how is GPA calculated? A lot of students have this question mainly because, they may have not started off so great when they started out in college their freshman year at 18 years old. But now they're back in school and they've significantly improved. Fortunately, the way that we calculate GPA is anything that's college level will be counted towards your cumulative GPA that is a C- or above. So any D's or S will not be counted into that cumulative GPA. So that's one of the benefits of, I think, our program. Honestly, it does kind of give students it gives them room to breathe and just confidence in continuing with the application process.
And I will take the next question. So can I work during this program? It's a great question. Like I mentioned before, that it is a pretty time-intensive program, and it requires a flexible schedule. So classes are 2 to 4 days per week, clinical hours 1 to 2 days per week, and then there is a significant amount of studying that's required outside of class in order for students to be successful in this program. So that's just something to keep in mind. So we typically recommend that students don't work while they're in this program because of how time-intensive it is, and because this schedule is subject to change each semester. So if you have a certain class schedule where you only have class 2 days a week, Tuesday, Thursdays, and clinical hours on Wednesdays, that might be the case for one semester, but it might change for the next semester. So a flexible schedule on your part is required in order for students to be successful. So we do typically recommend that students do not work during this program.
Is a deposit required if I am admitted into the program? There is actually a deposit. There is a $500 deposit, enrollment deposit, that will go towards the cost of, or it will go towards tuition, and it will be due probably within 1 week that you've learned that you've been admitted to the nursing program. Just know that if you are admitted and there is an enrollment deposit due, you can pay it online, and a link will be provided to you so you can pay easily with a credit card or debit card. And you will also be notified of the date and time that it should be due by, no later than Tuesday at 12 p.m. And we will give you that date. But most likely it'll be due within 1 week.
Now we're going to be shifting over to questions that were submitted throughout the presentation. So like I said, if you have further questions, you're welcome to submit those questions and we'll get to as many as we can. But one of the questions that we received is, what does regional accreditation mean? That's an excellent question. So there's 2 different types of accreditation that schools can have. There's national accreditation and regional accreditation. National accreditation is primarily reserved for career schools and schools like that. And regional accreditation is the highest accreditation that you can have as a school. So it's the same accreditation as community colleges have, as Cal State schools have, CSU schools. So it's the highest accreditation that you can have. Being WASC accredited just shows that we have very high academics. So it's an excellent accreditation and definitely something to be looking for. And it is nationwide. So there's different accreditation agencies within the regional accreditation, but it is the highest accreditation that you can have.
All right, I'll cover the next one. Are there any entrance exams? No, actually, there are no entrance exams or even a place for you to submit a score. So there's no T's, no HESI, anything that's going to be required by APU. Everything that you will submit on your application will play a role in the selection process. So again, your essay, your resume, your references, be very specific or I guess particular about who you select. And then essay, resume, references, official transcripts, and that's pretty much it. And then, of course, an LVN license if you're a candidate for the LVN to BSN program.
Next question that was submitted is what makes a candidate competitive for this program? So that is something to keep in mind, that this program is a very competitive program to apply for. So that's just something to keep in mind when going through the application process. There are a variety of things that the School of Nursing will be looking for when doing the review process. As admissions representatives, myself and Salvador and the rest of our team do not do reviews of applications. It's done entirely by the School of Nursing. And we don't know specifically, what they look for, but the advice that we can give is they do a holistic review of an application. So they will be looking at everything that a student submits in the application, and they do try to make the best selections from there. So they try to get to know the student behind the application. So like Sal just said, there will be an essay required, resume, recommendations, and that's really a chance for the student to give details of who they are so they can see, so the admissions committee can see that. But I will say that GPA is also an important factor in the review process. So that's something to keep in mind when going through the process, as GPA is an important factor. If you're just getting started on the prerequisite courses, you have an excellent opportunity to work as hard as you can in those classes to get the best possible grades in GPA that you can.
All right, and just really quickly, speaking of GPA and the way that we calculate it, if you needed to repeat or retake a science class, for example, fortunately, APU will actually only take a look at the higher grade. So if a student has completed chemistry and they took it the first time, they earned a C, and then they retook it, the equivalent course, and earned an A, we would only take a look at the A. We won't average it out to a B. So that's one thing to mention as well. And then are there classes or clinicals in the evening or on the weekends? Yes, potentially. We try to schedule those. I mean, it really is at the mercy of our clinical partners, but we try to schedule those during normal business hours, if possible, throughout the week. But there is definitely a possibility of those clinicals being scheduled on the weekends. But that's why we want to make sure that that it will require some flexibility on your end, and definitely some commitment. And fortunately, though, there are no classes on the weekends. So if anything, if you had to commit to anything on the weekend, it would most likely just be clinicals. And then as far as who is your admissions representative, when you either submit an inquiry or submit the application, rather, you will be assigned an admissions representative. We try to get to students as soon as possible on that first day. But we reach out to you and we'll follow up. If we can't get a hold of you via phone, we'll leave a voicemail, we'll text you, and we will email you. So those are the three forms of communication that we'll try to reach out to you. So you'll hear from us for sure.
And in terms of what's included in the biblical studies courses, there's a variety of biblical studies courses that students may be required to take. Again, the number of courses will be determined by how many transfer units each student has. But the classes may be covering Old Testament books, so Exodus and Deuteronomy, or New Testament books, the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Gospels, Christian life, faith, and ministry. So there's a variety of different biblical studies courses that may be required. That's something that students will hear more about if they are admitted into the program. And then there's also a question, are there extensive work that's involved for this class along with the nursing studies. This is an upper division transfer nursing program, so it's primarily the upper division courses of the nursing program. So the general education courses and science courses will be out of the way for the most part, and then students will primarily be working on nursing theory, clinical classes, and everything that's wrapped up within that.
All right, so somebody had a question about the personal statement and whether 2 pages would be considered too lengthy. Yes, only because the instructions do give it a 1 page maximum. So like I mentioned earlier, if you want to use single space typing to make efficient use of that 1 page, that would be the way to go. There's no particular format. So if anything, just make sure that, paragraphs are apparent. Transitions between paragraphs are smooth, and single space typing is acceptable. And then, are there any perks for being an LVN? There are actually, not in the case that it would accelerate the program more, but LVNs, because of their academic experience in the past and their practical experience just in the field, will probably have the opportunity to test out of a couple subjects, part of a couple subjects, which would be nutrition and pharmacology. So that would be determined after an LVN to BSN student has been accepted, but they'll be given the opportunity to take a competency exam for those 2 classes or subjects, which are usually scheduled at the very beginning of the nursing program.
And there's a question about if you can apply for multiple campuses at once. And unfortunately, you can only apply for one campus at a time. So you will need to decide which campus is closest to, which campus you'd like to apply for, but we can only review one application at a time. So if students were to apply for 2 campuses at one time, we would ask the student which campus they'd like to choose, and we would withdraw one of those applications.
I'd like to mention, though, you can select alternate locations on the application itself. Did you want to talk about that, Kelsey?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so you can select that select that you're open to being considered for other campuses, and then if there were spots available at other campuses, then you may be considered for those campuses. So you can select that you only want to be considered for the campus that you applied for, or you can select that you're open to being considered for alternate locations. So if you are in a middle area, if you're between Monrovia and the Inland Empire, and either campus would be a good fit for you, you can choose one to be considered for primarily, and then select that you're open to being considered for alternate locations. And if there's space available at the alternate location, that might be a possibility as well. Yeah, it's a very good point.
All right, so a couple more questions coming in. Are some of the classes online, or are they all face-to-face? They are all most likely going to be face-to-face, I think, with the exception of those biblical, theological, or philosophical general ed courses. So yes, expect to be on campus, completing those didactic lecture type courses and labs. And then as far as that schedule goes, do we need to add classes on our own, or do you guys make the schedule for us? So it's a pretty set schedule. It is a cohort style model. So if you're one of the 20 students here at the Inland Empire campus, you and those other 19 students will be progressing together, taking those exact same courses together for the next 2 years. So everything's kind of preset for you, but it does require you to actually register for those classes. So you'll be given the course list prior to every term or when registration period opens up, and then you'll be responsible for adding those classes for that following term.
Great. And there's a question about, does it matter how many times a science class can be taken to achieve a higher grade? It doesn't matter how many times you've taken those courses. There's 2 different GPAs, as Salvador has mentioned, the science GPA and the cumulative GPA. For the science GPA, the way that's calculated, it'll just be the 4 highest grades for those specific classes that you've received. So if you're retaking science classes, it may impact that GPA more positively because it's only 4 classes that are going into that GPA. How will it impact your GPA overall? If you continue to get higher grades, then the cumulative GPA may be raised as well. So they're not going to take a look at how many times students have taken those classes. They're going to be taking a look primarily at the GPA that students are receiving, And it is easier typically to raise the science GPA due to the fact that there's only 4 classes that are going into what that GPA would be.
All right. So someone asked, will a CNA count, excuse me, a CNA count towards considerations? When it comes to CNA, those students that are currently a CNA, they'd want to apply as an upper division BSN transfer student. But having that experience, I have heard in one of the orientations that they may consider those students to, or at least offer the competency exams for nutrition and pharmacology. So it's definitely something that would have to be brought up again during orientation if you were admitted as a CNA. But yes, it's a possibility. But again, it will not accelerate the program more than those 2 years that you will be here at APU.
And there's a question about the concept of the wait list. So there is a wait list that will be created each semester, and the purpose of that wait list is to fulfill a spot if a spot opens up in the cohort that was admitted. So 20 students are admitted for 2 of our campuses, 30 for the high desert, and then there's a wait list for each campus. If for some reason a student decides not to continue in enrollment before the semester gets started, then someone from the wait list would be pulled and added to that cohort. So that's the purpose of the wait list. Unfortunately, if students are not pulled from the wait list and put into the cohort, the students on the wait list would need to reapply for another semester if they were still interested in applying and being considered for the program.
All right. So we had some questions about financial aid and sources of funding, but yeah, so the first thing you want to do is submit your FAFSA application. That will determine your eligibility when it comes to grants and loans. But oftentimes, financial aid will not cover the full cost of tuition every single year. So you will most likely need to find an additional source of funding. Our student financial services may be able to provide you with some resources in case you need to look elsewhere for private loans and school loans. But yeah, just keep that in mind. Be prepared, so that way you're ready once you're admitted to the program. There's not a lot of time in between a student that learns that they're admitted and then the time that they actually start the program. So just be prepared and always ask questions. You can always reach out to Student Financial Services and they'd be happy to help out. And then as far as the certifications that will waive the prerequisites, I know we mentioned that earlier. Let me see if I can go back to that. But it's basically the CSUGE or the IGETSI certification. And it has to be a full certification that will waive the writing, fine arts, history, and literature. So those are the ones that you'll see right here in this first asterisk. You'll see it there, and those top 4 classes can be waived by the certification. Or if you have a bachelor's degree as well, it'll waive those as well if you're missing any.
Right, and there was a question here, if I'm missing one class, is that a class that could be taken at EPU? Unfortunately, we don't offer the prerequisites here, and so all classes are required to be completed prior to the deadline to be considered for the program. So this is only an upper division program, so students will need to have all of those prerequisite classes completed, typically outside of APU at a community college, at a 4-year institution. So if you have a bachelor's degree completed already, and so you have almost all the classes done, but you're missing 1 or 2, those classes would need to be completed at a community college or at another institution before applying to the program. It cannot be taken at APU within the program. And then there is a question also, will I have a better chance of being admitted if you already have a bachelor's degree? That's definitely something you can add to your resume, and that's something that will be taken into account when doing the review process. And that'll be taken into account creating that GPA and everything. And it'll be up to the School of Nursing if, how that's taken into consideration.
And also regarding the bachelor's or those students already have a bachelor's degree, you may also want to consider the entry-level master's nursing program if your ultimate goal is to become a nurse practitioner or earn your MSN. So definitely keep that program in mind, which we here at APU do offer. And then, is there an advisor I can speak with regarding to see if all of my classes are fulfilled? I went to two schools for my prerequisites. Again, you can either self-evaluate using the transfer guideline website. If your school isn't listed on there, which happens quite often, all you have to do is start the application, and then in the college history information portion of that application, you'll have the ability to upload your unofficial transcripts, and we can do the pre-evaluation for you, and we'll determine at that point if you've satisfied the prerequisites. And once that evaluation is completed, it will look something like this. And at that point, if there's a checkbox that is missing, that means that you're missing that prerequisite.
All right, and the next question we got is about if the COVID vaccination is required. As far as APU standards, we don't have any requirements as far as students here at APU specifically. So there's no requirement from an APU point of view. However, for the students in this program, they will be working within hospitals and clinical settings. So there may be requirements for those clinical settings. So I'm not exactly sure what the requirements are as of right now, and if anything has changed in the last couple of months, but that's something that may be required for students to do clinical hours, which is a requirement of this program.
All right. So here are one last time the application requirements, and you can apply by going to apu.edu/apply. You want to select the professional bachelor's as the option. When you start the application, you'll create a username and a password to log into the application portal. And then you can start that application as soon as possible, especially if you want us to evaluate your coursework. And the requirements will include a $45 application fee, which is actually the very last thing that you would have to do. And there's no application fee to evaluate your coursework, like I mentioned. It's the very last thing that you would have to do. So you can evaluate your coursework before that. Submit your official transcript showing the completion of the prerequisites. For those students that have an LVN license, go ahead and retrieve that from the online website and upload it. And then as far as your nursing statement, 1 page maximum, 2 references, preferably individuals that are familiar with your professional or academic abilities, a professional resume, 48 transferable units, obviously including those prerequisites we just went over, the minimum cumulative of a 3.0 GPA and a 2.7 science GPA. And then those prerequisites do need to be completed before any of the following deadlines. Okay? All right, then. Well, thank you all again for attending our Upper Division Transfer webinar. Again, we encourage you to start that application, reach out to us. We'd be happy to assist you and answer those questions and discuss in detail your evaluation once you get it back and give you some options in case you're missing any prerequisites. This webinar will be posted online at some point, probably within the next couple of weeks. The current one that we have online is probably outdated by a couple years, but it will be posted in case you missed anything or had, just some questions in the future. But yes, thank you so much for attending. Kelsey, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, I think that's it. Thanks everyone for being here. We're really excited to work with you through the application process. And if you do have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us through the admissions@apu.edu email address, and we'd be more than happy to assist you.